In the heart of West Africa lies a small but troubled nation called Sierra Leone, a land once rich in natural beauty and diamond-filled rivers, but by the late 1980s, it had become a place torn apart by greed and war. Villages burned in the distance, and the sound of gunfire was as common as the cries of people running for their lives. The Civil War wasn't just a battle between soldiers, it was a war between neighbors, between the government and the brutal rebel faction known as the Revolutionary United Front, or RUF. These rebels weren't fighting for freedom, they were fighting for diamonds, the blood-red currency that fueled their weapons and their power. Entire villages were wiped out in minutes. The RUF would storm through with machetes and rifles, forcing people to obey or die. Anyone suspected of supporting the government had their hands cut off so they could never vote again. The strong men were enslaved and dragged to diamond mines deep in the jungle, forced to dig under armed watch while the rebels smuggled the gems across borders to buy more guns. Among those captured was Solomon Vandy, a humble fisherman who lived for his family. When the rebels attacked his village, chaos exploded, houses burned, people screamed, and gunfire echoed through the trees. In that madness, Solomon pushed his wife and children toward the forest, begging them to run. Before he could follow, he was caught. The rebels were about to mutilate him when their commander stopped them, deciding Solomon's hands were too useful. "He'll dig for us," the leader said coldly. Solomon was chained and taken to the mines, hell carved into the earth. Men there dug day and night, starving, dehydrated, and terrified. If anyone tried to steal even a single fragment of diamond, they were executed on the spot. One scorching afternoon, as Solomon's shovel scraped the dirt, a glint caught his eye. He brushed away the mud and froze. It was a large pink diamond, unlike anything he had ever seen. His heart pounded. Carefully, he hid it beneath his foot until the guard turned away, then slipped it into a cloth and buried it near the latrine, whispering a silent prayer that it would stay safe. But luck never lasted long here. Moments later, a fellow prisoner spotted him and demanded the gem. Before Solomon could react, chaos returned. The army stormed the camp. Bullets flew. Explosions shook the ground. The man who wanted the diamond was shot and collapsed beside Solomon, who quickly buried the stone deeper in the dirt before soldiers captured him. In prison, Solomon crossed paths with a man whose life was built on lies and deals, Danny Archer, a former soldier turned diamond smuggler. Archer had made his fortune running guns in exchange for stones, working both sides of the war without loyalty to anyone. When the wounded prisoner, delirious with pain, raved about the huge pink diamond hidden by Solomon, Archer's instincts sharpened. He saw not just a gem, but a ticket out of chaos. After his release, Archer began plotting. He tracked down Solomon's name, arranged for his freedom through shady contacts, and made him an offer that neither man could refuse. One was desperate to find his family. The other wanted the diamond that could change his life forever. Together, they would risk everything, betrayal, danger, and death itself, in a country where every stone had a price and every soul was for sale. Danny Archer walks into the same corner bar with cash in his palm and a cold purpose. He needs a gun. He flirts with luck instead and meets Maddie Bowen, a sharp-eyed reporter who starts asking pointed questions about the diamond trade. When Archer realizes she's a journalist, he brusquely brushes her off and heads for the door, but Maddie follows, curiosity written all over her face. She's trying to trace why tiny Sierra Leone, supposedly diamond-rich, has no recorded legal exports while neighboring Liberia's mines are sending fortunes across the border to a shadowy buyer everyone calls Vandicap. Archer, who quietly orchestrates the stone's route, refuses to answer, then slips away. In truth, he's the middleman who trades weapons to the RUF for gems, funnels those stones up the chain to Colonel Corgi, and watches them flow onward to Vandicap. Meanwhile, Solomon Vandy is searching for his family in a crowded refugee camp only to find chaos. His wife and daughter are there, but his boy, Dia, is missing, snatched by rebel squads who are already turning abducted children into tiny soldiers and teaching them how to shoot and kill. Colonel Corgi summons Archer and accuses him of losing diamonds last time. This time he wants that pink stone Solomon hid. Archer had secretly hoped to keep the gem himself, but Corgi's orders are iron, so Archer presses Solomon for the diamond, claiming half the take because he pulled strings to free him from prison. Solomon swears he has nothing. Before words can settle, rebels strike the camp, gunfire rips through the sky, buildings ignite, and Archer and Solomon sprint through smoke and bodies to hide with other survivors as the city burns around them. Children, too small to understand the politics, are shoved into ranks and handed rifles. The war eats them first. In the chaos, Archer searches for Maddie Bowen, the reporter he briefly lied to in the bar. When he finds her, he tells a contact to send her to a safe house where he'll wait. Maddie arrives, wary but eager, and Archer finally offers the trade he had in mind. He'll hand over the leads and documents she needs about the diamond network if she helps him find Solomon's missing family. She agrees. They hire a helicopter, fly back to the refugee site, and Solomon is reunited with his wife and daughter in a raw, tearful moment, except for Dia, who was taken. The army cannot reach him because the boy is now hidden on the other side of rebel-controlled lines, so the family is evacuated by air. On the flight, Solomon confesses what he knows: the pink diamond lies beyond a range of mountains, tucked away where civilians rarely go. Archer unrolls a crudely drawn map and asks Solomon to point the exact spot. Solomon only smiles and says he doesn't need the map, he already knows the place and can lead them there if they're willing to risk everything. Danny Archer needs a gun and he goes straight to the bar with cash in his hand, but instead of a weapons dealer he finds Maddie Bowen, a persistent reporter looking to crack open the diamond racket that's bleeding Sierra Leone dry. At first Archer brushes her off when she identifies herself. He doesn't want a press badge digging into the routes he moves gems through. Maddie, stubborn and principled, won't let it go. She's tracked an odd discrepancy: Sierra Leone shows almost no legitimate diamond exports, while neighboring Liberia's trade towers into the billions, and a merciless buyer known as Vandicap sits at the top of that pyramid. Archer refuses to talk, because he is the middle link, the arms for gems broker who moves diamonds up to Colonel Corgi and onward, yet he slips away from the bar with the secret heavy on his mind. Meanwhile, Solomon Vandy's search for his missing boy ends in heartbreak when he learns his son Dia has been seized and turned into one of the RUF's child fighters. Soldiers teach the kids to fire and to hate, and families are torn apart while the war grinds on. Maddie, exhausted by writing the same tragedies in sorrowful columns that change nothing, accepts. She believes hard evidence, published where it will be seen, could make Western consumers understand that the jewelry they wear is stained with someone's blood. To seal the deal, Archer gives her a diary full of account numbers, phone lines, and addresses, the ledger of the smuggling chain, and warns her that if she publishes before the diamond is secured, she will put his life and hers in immediate danger. If Archer fails to get the stone, he begs her to publish everything, because he says he will be dead anyway. With no better choice, the three climb into a battered reporter's van and head for the mountains where Solomon insists the pink gem is buried. RUF gunmen ambush their vehicle en route, but the trio escape on foot into the wilderness, chased into the forest until a small band of villagers finds them and leads them to a teacher who shelters and protects a cluster of orphan children. That night, by a low fire, Archer confesses parts of his past. He fought in Angola, where race meant nothing in the trenches and comradeship blurred color lines, but the wars were never about ideology, they were about oil, ivory, and the dirty lust for diamonds. He left the army disgusted and decided never to pick up a rifle again. Now the pink diamond is his chance for a clean break. He tells Maddie his parents were killed when he was a boy, his mother shot, his father hanged, memories that still turn him cold and sometimes make him wonder whether forgiveness is even possible. Maddie listens, touches his hand, and offers a sliver of compassion. By dawn they trek back to meet the army unit answering to Colonel Corgi, learning that the military plans a major push to wipe the rebels out. Corgi tells Archer he is now part of their operation, and Archer's choice is made: fight with them and see the mission through, for better or worse. Danny didn't want to turn himself in, so he pulled Solomon aside and whispered a desperate plan to run. Before they left, he found Maddie and told her they were leaving, and something fragile and dangerous began between them, an attraction that started with shared danger and small mercies. Maddie scribbled down her phone number, the newsroom address, and an office line on a scrap of paper and pressed it into his hand, asking if he would call. He promised that whenever he found a telephone, she would be the first voice he dialed. Then Danny and Solomon set off together to locate the pink stone, trudging toward the ridge where Solomon insisted the gem was buried. The route grew rough, heat and hunger thinned their patience, and at a certain fork Solomon suddenly veered off course. Danny grabbed his arm and demanded they move the other way, convinced the diamond lay to the right. Solomon snapped back that his priority was finding his boy, that no one, no mercenary, no colonel, could command him. Danny answered like a man used to issuing orders. Right now I'm the one in charge, he said, and when words failed they fell to fists. In the scuffle Danny's gun came up and hovered at Solomon's temple. Solomon looked at the barrel as if at an old debt and said, flatly, that he was already dead to himself. Nothing could stop him from going to his son, even if it meant dying. Danny's expression changed. Something like pity or respect eased his grip, and together they moved toward the rebel encampment where, Solomon said, his boy and the diamond were both held. Approaching the RUF lines they saw the camp that had once swallowed Solomon, bodies bent under tarps, flame-scarred huts, armed silhouettes everywhere, and realized they could not simply walk in and take what they needed. Danny insisted on calling Colonel Corgi to draw a helicopter strike. When Corji's choppers attacked, the rebels would lift their heads and they could slip in during the confusion. Solomon muttered that his son might not even be there, that they should wait for night, and so they settled down beneath a thorny copse. Exhausted, Danny fell asleep and woke to find Solomon gone. He had slipped into the camp alone to search for Diameter. Down in the labyrinth of tents, Solomon found his son at a wooden table playing cards with other boys. Dia had been remade into a small soldier, eyes blank with indoctrination, and when Solomon reached for him the boy recoiled and snarled that his father was the enemy. Brainwashing had installed new loyalties. The reunion Solomon imagined collapsed into rejection, and before he could recover, the man who had once tried to steal Solomon's diamond reappeared, now free from prison and hungry for the gem. The man spat out lies, taunted Solomon, and threatened to rape and kill his family unless Solomon dug up the pink diamond for him. Pressed and terrified, Solomon gave in and went to fetch the stone. At that exact moment the helicopter shrieked in. Danny had called Corji, and the sky opened with tracer fire as soldiers carpet-bombed the camp in a ruthless, indiscriminate barrage. In the bedlam, Solomon lunged at the thief and killed him while bullets carved the air. Dia took a round meant for his father and crumpled, but Danny dove and dragged the boy to safety, cradling him as the firefight turned the encampment into an army-controlled graveyard. Colonel Corji swept in amid the smoke, demanding the diamond's location. Danny answered evasively that they would split it, but Corji told him to cut a deal. Danny's pride flared and he vowed never to betray his terms, yet Corji countered that if anyone would speak, it would be Solomon, and when the colonel bent toward Solomon and asked where the gem was, the man stayed silent. Danny moved closer, jaw tight, because he knew something the colonel did not. If anyone could coax the secret out of Solomon, it would be him, and so he stepped forward to try, part protector, part parasite, while the war around them kept burning. Corji presses for the truth. Where's the diamond? And Solomon refuses, flatly stating he won't trust the colonel. Corji snarls that he has ways to open mouths, and the room tightens around them. Danny steps forward, bargaining like a man who deals in lives. He asks what their cut will be if he produces the stone. The colonel promises a split. Danny refuses anything less than the lion's share and seals the deal with a hard nod. Then Danny reveals what he already knows. Solomon's missing son is in rebel hands, and with that leverage Solomon is forced to lead them back to the spot where he'd buried the pink gem. The hills stretched out like open wounds, pocked with craters and half-dug pits, evidence of men who came before, all chasing the same illusion of wealth buried in the earth. Solomon paused, scanning the scarred landscape until his instincts and memory pulled him toward one particular spot. Kneeling, he began to dig, his hands blistered and raw, the sound of his blade slicing through soil echoing in the heavy silence. Then, a faint shimmer caught the light, the unmistakable glint of the diamond. Before he could react, chaos exploded around them. Danny, sensing betrayal in Corji's eyes, spun around with his rifle raised. The air cracked with gunfire. Bullets tore through dust and leaves as Danny unleashed everything he had, cutting down Corji and the soldiers surrounding him in a desperate, furious blaze. Smoke and dirt swirled around him. When the gunfire finally stopped, Danny staggered, clutching his bleeding side, barely able to stay upright. Through the haze, he saw Solomon still digging, hands trembling, face streaked with sweat and fear, until at last, the earth gave way, revealing the raw, blinding beauty of the diamond. But as Solomon lifted it from the dirt, a new threat emerged. Dia stood a few yards away, his rifle fixed squarely on his father's chest. The boy's face was hardened, distant, his eyes empty, washed clean of innocence. Solomon froze. He didn't reach for a weapon. Instead, his voice broke through the gunmetal tension, soft and pleading. He reminded Dia of home, of his mother's laugh, of his little brother's games, of the warm nights before the war had taken everything. "You are my son," he whispered. "You remember." Something in the boy cracked. The rifle wavered. Memories, real ones, pushed past the lies he'd been fed. Tears welled up in his eyes, and with a sudden, heart-wrenching sob, Dia dropped the gun and collapsed into his father's arms. Before they could breathe, more soldiers flooded the valley, their boots pounding like thunder. Gunfire erupted again, echoing through the hills as the trio fled through smoke and fire. They stumbled and crawled, hearts racing, lungs burning, but somehow, they survived. When they finally stopped, Danny, wounded, pale, and exhausted, looked at Solomon. "The diamond," he rasped, holding out his hand. Solomon hesitated, then placed the gem, still caked with blood and earth, into Danny's palm. Danny called in a helicopter, but as the distant hum grew louder, his strength began to fail. The climb ahead was steep, too steep for a man bleeding out. Breathing heavily, Danny pressed the diamond back into Solomon's hand. "Take it," he said, his voice faint but steady. "Get your family out. Keep them safe." He handed Solomon his pistol, forcing a weak smile. "And don't trust the pilot. Don't trust anyone." For a moment, their eyes met, an unspoken understanding between two men shaped by violence but bound by a strange kind of loyalty. Then Danny pushed Solomon and Dia toward the ridge. "Go!" he shouted. As the helicopter descended through the swirling dust, Solomon turned for one last glance. Danny stood alone, gun in hand, watching the horizon where the soldiers were closing in. He knew he wouldn't leave this valley alive, but for once, his death would mean something. When the sound of the rotor faded into the sky, Danny reached for his radio. His voice was weak but calm as he spoke the last words he'd ever say. "Maddie," he whispered, "I need you to find Solomon. He's got something the world needs to see." His tone was calm, but every word carried the weight of pain and finality. "Find Solomon," Danny said quietly, his breath faltering. "He needs your help, and he's holding something priceless." On the other end of the line, Maddie froze. There was something in his voice, an emptiness that told her what her heart refused to believe. "Danny, please," she whispered, voice breaking. "Tell me where you are. I can come." He cut her off gently. "It's all right, Maddie. I'm just glad I met you. You know that." There was silence, then the line went dead. Maddie sat there, phone trembling in her hand, tears blurring her vision. They'd never confessed it, but both knew the truth. Love had always existed between them, quiet and unspoken. Days later, Solomon arrived in London, weary but alive, clutching a single worn satchel. There, in the sleek glass offices of Van de Kapp, he met Maddie again. Together, they faced the man Danny had bargained with before his death. Solomon stood tall, not as a desperate miner but as a father reclaiming his life. He finished the deal Danny had started, exchanging the rare pink diamond for his family's freedom and a chance to start anew. Maddie captured everything, each photograph telling a story the world wasn't ready to see. Though Danny was gone, his fight wasn't. In his absence, his mission found a new voice, Maddie's. Later, while sorting through his old field bag, she discovered what he'd left behind, a treasure trove of truth. Stacks of papers, undeveloped film rolls, recordings, all evidence of the ugly underbelly of the diamond trade. Smuggling routes traced across war zones, ledgers showing payments to militia leaders, and coded letters connecting corporate elites to chaos. Danny had risked his life to uncover it all, and he had trusted her to finish what he couldn't. Maddie spent sleepless nights piecing the puzzle together. Every line she wrote carried the weight of his memory. When her article finally hit the press, it shook the world to its core. The front page exploded with her exposé, images of child miners with scarred hands, reports of villages destroyed, documents proving that conflict diamonds had slipped seamlessly into global markets. The public was outraged. Protests erupted. Governments were forced to respond. Van de Kapp's empire crumbled overnight. His name, once synonymous with power and wealth, now became a symbol of greed and guilt. Danny Archer's story had become more than a tragedy, it was a reckoning. Months later, under the blinding lights of an international summit, Solomon stood on stage, a trembling photograph of his family clutched tightly in his hands. The banner behind him read, "The Blood Diamond Conference." Cameras clicked. The world was watching. When he began to speak, the room fell silent. His words were not polished, but they were raw, filled with the truth only someone who had lived it could tell. He spoke of how diamonds had funded death, how children were turned into soldiers, and how beauty was bought with blood. His voice cracked, but he continued, each word carving into the hearts of those listening. And when he finished, the silence was deafening, until one delegate rose, then another, and another. Representatives from dozens of nations stepped forward to sign a global accord, promising to end the trade of conflict diamonds once and for all. It was a moment that would go down in history, not as the end of suffering, but as the beginning of change. From the audience, Maddie watched, camera trembling in her hands. Her eyes filled with tears as Solomon raised the photograph of his family for the world to see. In that instant, she knew Danny's sacrifice had not been wasted. His fight had lit a spark that no bullet, no betrayal, and no greed could ever extinguish. And that's how their story ends, not with loss, but with meaning.